I'm sure y'all are busy tweeting and Facebooking away, but this is a really good chance to ask our extraordinary panel everything that you wanted to know about textiles. So, also, I hope y'all are coming for the show. I hope y'all are coming for the show later. Sujata has a question.
One question, and to Ritu and maybe Sangeeta more. I mean, I'm very proud of all the Indian textiles and everything that we see, but to the young designers here, could you perhaps tell us how, a lot of people work on Indian textiles, but a lot of the shapes and things they make, there's no concentration on bodies, on silhouettes. How do you combine Indian textiles and also, in a way, work with bodies? Because some Indian textile doesn't sort of conform to modern bodies very well. And it's very important, I think, for us not only to think about Indian textiles, but how it's wearable today and on silhouette and the body.
I think the question is for whoever didn't hear it, and a very valid one, is how do you translate Indian textiles into shapes and bodies which actually are, let's say, more modern and more fitted? Is that the question? Actually, yeah. Okay. I think your question is in 2 or 3 parts. As far as are concerned in this country, they've always been made for the unstitched garment, not for the stitched garment. There we do have a situation where the technique and the nature of the beast, so to say, is such that you will have to style it in forms which do not lend themselves, let's say, to a lycra dress. That goes as far as the handlooms are concerned, and that will remain. So you will have to style them in the way that they are best fit for, rather than trying to go against the grain, so to say. The second part of handicrafts in India are very, very maneuverable. We're talking about embroideries. You can put them onto jersey. You can put them onto just about any kind of fabric there is in the market in any kind of shape. We've done that ad nauseum with our collection, and I find it very easy. Here what you do is you're basically taking the aesthetics and the handcrafts, and doesn't mean that you have to go, if it was belonged to a carpet bag, for instance, or belonged to a thela at one time, you don't necessarily have to make a thela with it. You can take the essence of the embroidery or the essence of the aesthetic that goes behind it, and then it's very easy to, again, customize it to a modern generation, to a younger clientele who wants to wear, let's say, a black dress, but maybe with a touch of that embroidery on it. That's very doable. Also, huge printing skills, not only the actual printing, but the genius that goes into making a print belongs to this country. That is so easily put into various different fabrics that I think if you only talk handloom, yes, it is what it is, and it has a beauty because of that. Also, is a way of blending hand-spun yarn, the khadi yarn, with some element of synthetic to give it that drape. So this is where the future innovation comes in. So I wouldn't just put away textiles as a basket case for not being able to make garments. There is a lot of innovation required, and it can be done.
With your permission, may I take forward the question? Okay, so since you talked about the silhouette and how your question was relevant to how a designer is taking it into a contemporary silhouette, so a modern global traveler or an executive woman would wear. If I should, at the cost of sounding a bit pretentious, share with you that I'm actually wearing all the Indian designers who have created. 11 years ago when we launched Sabyasachi, this is his top that I'm wearing, which is 100% Indian, hand-stitched, with hand-block printing and 10 different types of embroideries and screen printing. I have Savio John, which is inspired by Kutchi traditions of Kauri, which could be worn by any contemporary woman. I have Sangeeta Katiwada, who's inspired by the Kali Ghat paintings of the Devi coin necklaces, which could be worn by a contemporary woman, and Metaphor, who works with 100% Indian textiles, but creates silhouettes, which is for contemporary women. So I hope that satisfies you and the young designers in the audience. And I hope the young designers in the audience would take forward these traditions so that West Side would launch their collections and would be the next Zara.
If you have questions, please raise your hand so that we can bring the mic to you. Saket, you have
Yeah. My question is to Gaurav. Gaurav, we all are aware of Fab India's unique sourcing model. Okay, so can you let us know about the West Side model and what are the challenges that West Side faces when you source Indian textiles?
The sourcing model, I don't know how many people in the room are aware of the Fab India. So, theirs is a sort of a more decentralized model where, they sort of buy locally. Every region buys what they want to buy and it's sort of aggregated. Ours is more controlled in the center. But what we do is, in a sense, it's like, and again, if I may draw a parallel, and I will sort of explain what the Zara model is. The Zara model worldwide is they buy the fabric. So they directly go to the source and they work directly with fabric sources. They, more often than not, directly procure the fabric and stock it, and then they get it converted. The garmenting, they get it done, or any other value addition or work that needs to be done. So ours is more like that model. From for an ethnic wear business, we have a whole fabric sourcing division, which actually has offices across the country. We have sourcing offices across the globe because we now do some amount of procurement out of China and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka as well. But the ethnic wear sourcing is all out of India. We have offices in Bhagalpur. We have an office in Mangalgiri. We just set up an office in Kolkata, which will look at Puglia. We have a very big setup in Jaipur, which does a lot of procurement out of Jaipur, Jodhpur. We are setting up an office in Ahmedabad to look at a lot of procurement out of Gujarat. So the model, the way it works is the designers work with the fabric sourcing division. They go out into the regions. They spend a lot of time. And one message I have for all the young designers in the audience is that you can't do this unless if you go to the source. You sit there and there are designers who go to the source. They sit in the villages, and with the weavers or the master weavers for days at end. And it's only after they sort of completed their design cycle that they come back. Then orders are placed. And, then the whole process starts rolling from a scale perspective. So the model is to have sourcing offices. We support them from a capital perspective because a lot of these people don't have capital. So we provide the capital to allow them to buy yarn, in some cases looms or any other infrastructural support that they might need. We, in more cases than not, also support them from we go beyond just so if the village needs some support in terms of a creche or, as I was telling you, in a water treatment plant, we provide that as well, so that it's a sustainable sourcing setup. And then designers go to these, designers spend time in these areas, work with the weavers, as I said, because it's very important for us to translate the craft to what is relevant to our consumer. We have to bridge that gap. If we don't bridge that gap, we are, we'll be talking to ourselves. So designers spend time there with the weavers, with the master weavers and the, all the artisans, and they create looks, which are then collated, brought into the head office. They're reviewed, there's something called a range review where all the designs and everything is reviewed, and accordingly then orders are placed. Now comes the challenges. The challenges are that, the challenges are essentially of scale. There is a certain minimum quality requirement that a consumer that comes to a West Side will have in terms of how much the product will last and how it will wash and wear. So how do we bring that level of, let's say, color fastness, for example? Now an evolved consumer will understand that fabric will bleed to a certain extent. It's one of the, and there are irregularities in the fabric which are also an inherent beauty of the fabric. But we will have to go to a level where it's acceptable to a much larger audience without actually killing the look and making it too standardized. So just to give you an example, one of the things we did was, in order to improve color fastness of a certain type of fabrics, we actually engaged a technician, one of the leading fabric technicians with a government lab. We sent him to the village, and the fixing agents, he worked with the color fixing agents on what kind of color fixing agents could be tinkered with. And he spent almost about a month there, worked with the weavers there in terms of, and the dyers there, to figure out how to make the color fast to a level that is acceptable to us. We invested in that. He went there, he did it, and thereafter, our color faster levels are at a level which are acceptable to our consumer, and yet the look of the garment is indigenous. So we face problems like on the quality front, in bridging the gap between what the craft is and what the customer wants. The other big thing is the sheer volumes. Because we need, a consistent, within a band of consistency of quality and supply, we needed to keep churning, So, and yet these are people who weave, on a 16-hour shift, 5 meters of fabric a day. That's the best they can do. And typically when we make one style, we need at least about 1,000 meters or even more than that. So then again, we invest a lot. So we face that challenge, but we are investing. We've realized that just to go there and say, can it happen? No, it can't happen, and walk away is not going to solve the thing for us. The onus is on us to seed ourselves there, invest, and support the weaver community in order to supply to us. It's challenging. It's fraught with a lot of problems, a lot of wastage, a lot of supply which is inconsistent, which organized retail Parmesh does not allow. The consumer wants that clockwork efficiency. Your shelf is there, retail space is there, it's very expensive, it must be full. There must be something there because people are walking in, electricity bills, salary bills, everything is, that doesn't stop, no matter what the problem of the weaver in, Mangalgiri might be. So we work towards it. It's not easy, but I think, fortunately, we are well ahead on that curve. But as I said, we fundamentally believe that it is not only good, and I'm not being sort of, I'm not trying to say that it's only good for the weavers, it's very good for us, as you very rightly said. It's a point of differentiation. It's difficult to replicate, and that's why we invest a lot of energy, because we know that for most other retailers, international or local, it's not a model which is very easy to duplicate.
I'm just so glad hearing that you're spending so much time thinking about it. So, I'm going to give you a warm round of applause just for that. For the students in the audience especially, we have a Padma Shri on stage. We have the best minds in the Indian textile business on stage. Please raise your hands and ask questions.
Hi. My question was, given the exposure both Ms. Kumar and Ms. Kathiwar have in seeing textiles and the revival of textiles. Oh, sorry, am I too soft? Given the years and the detail that you've had to see textiles being revived, going forward, is there someone's work that you have seen that has caught your eye in terms of innovation, something that has struck you tremendously going forward? Because one aspect of it is reviving textiles, and the other aspect is innovating them for the next 100 years. Is there someone that crosses your mind, someone's work you've seen?
To me?
To both of you.
Well, I think very candidly, if we really have to talk about it, revival is a space in its own, and I think it's amazing that the amount of revival that is taking place in India today. But I think as a designer, you have to step forward now, because we cannot sell things because of sentiment and because it is an antique and it's because it's vintage. I think with the next generation that's going. So any kind of craft that we are talking about is actually today being used by a format like yours. Most of the designers are taking the craft and innovating it either by embellishing or by changing the end usage of the craft. That means if you have a fabric, I don't think it's any longer viable just to say, buy a sari in it, it's beautiful. The designer's role here has been actually to either convert it by some sort of printing or some sort of a styling where it fits into your lifestyles. And that is the innovation that I see not in one, but almost